Hi, my name is Valerie Pearson and I'm from Green Living Australia, and I'm also the author of Home Cheese Making in Australia. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is making kefir, but most importantly I'm going to discuss the difference in between kefir grains and kefir culture. So this information, a lot of this information is in my book. The recipe that we're going to do today is in there. But first, before I start making kefir for you, I'm actually going to talk to you about the difference in between kefir culture and kefir grains. So this is some dairy kefir grains in milk that I have, and I'm going to actually strain these grains to show you what they look like. So we'll just take the lid off. I've got a jug here and a strainer, and this is what I do every time I need to use my kefir when I've used kefir grains. I have to tip it into the strainer, get it all out into here, and you'll see the liquid, the drink part, has gone through, but there's what's left in here are some grains. Okay, so I don't know how well you can see this in the video, but they're like little pieces. Okay, so I would save those, and I would take those and I would put them in milk again and make my next batch. So these would go back in a jar. I would clean it, of course, start off with a nice clean environment. They would go back in the jar, and what would happen is I would go ahead and start another batch. This is ready for me to drink. Okay, it tastes beautiful. I can smell it. It smells beautiful. It's a great way to make kefir. However, with these grains, the only kind of kefir I can make is dairy kefir. What the grains are made of they are chains of polysaccharides, and in this case, casein. That's why dairy grains are a creamy, yellowy color like this, and not white or translucent. If you were making water kefir, you would have to get water kefir grains, and they are just made up of chains of polysaccharides, no casein. What the bacteria do, the microorganisms that make up the kefir colony, is they, just like anything else living, they get into an environment. If they like the environment, there's plenty of food, plenty of resources, not a lot of competition, it's a perfect environment for them. What they do is they go, I like it here, think I'll build a house. And that's what they do. They build a house out of the resources in their local environment, which in milk is sugar, lactose, so they make chains of polysaccharides, and casein, which is a protein. If they were in water, they don't have the protein, so they would just make chains of polysaccharides. So dairy kefir grains look different than water kefir grains because the water kefir grains don't have the casein. And when casein oxidizes, it goes a yellow color, which gives you the cream color of these grains. If I wanted to make coconut water kefir, I would have to use coconut water kefir grains. So you see how restrictive that is? Also, if I don't want to make this for a while, there are various different ways that I'm told that you can store the grains to keep them alive. I've been told you can freeze them. Well, I've killed several colonies doing that. So not all these ways worked for me. So I prefer not to use the grains anymore, even though it is an old-fashioned traditional way. What I'm doing is I'm using the culture that the grains are grown from. So here's my culture. There's a long list of ingredients here. Each one of these ingredients are microorganisms. There's no fillers or stabilizers or anything, just microorganisms. If I put these microorganisms in warm milk, they will grow grains. Except I don't want them to grow grains. I'm going to put them in my warm milk, and it's going to ferment into a beautiful kefir drink in 24 hours, and then I'm just going to chill it and drink it. If I left them in there for a week or two, they would grow grains just like this. But I'm just going to skip that part because I don't want to do it. Tomorrow, I can make coconut water kefir. The next day, I can make water kefir, and the day after that, I can make apple juice kefir. I can make kefir out of anything I want. I can change my mind every day, and I'm okay. I don't have to have multiple jars of multiple types of grains in my fridge or in my freezer, hoping I can bring them back to life. So I'm going to show you how you make the kefir out of the kefir culture instead of the kefir grains. You get a couple of sterile jars. Follow the instructions on how to divide and dose your culture, which is another YouTube video that I have on this same channel. But you're going to put all the culture in one jar, take 10% out, put in your second jar, and then use that second jar to make 10 liters. So what I'm going to use is a flip-top jar. So here's my flip-top jar. I'll just move these kefir grains out of the way for now. I'm going to use a flip-top jar, and I'm going to put my liquid that I'm going to use in here. I have some coconut water, which I'm going to use, which I've had sitting in a pot of warm water to warm it up. It needs to be about 30 degrees, okay? So I've warmed up my coconut water. I'm going to go ahead and put my coconut water in my jar. This is one of my favorite kefirs, by the way. Coconut water is very, very good for you. It's got lots of good nutrition. It's got phytochemicals, but for me, it's too sweet. I actually don't like drinking coconut water because I don't have a sweet tooth. But I've just got the coconut water in there. You can check the temperature. It's really good to have a thermometer. So I'm using one of the Green Living Australia thermometers, and I'm just checking the temperature to make sure it's about 30 degrees. And it's about 32. So I'm happy with that. So I'm happy to go ahead and put my culture in. So once you've got your coconut water warmed up, you don't want to put the culture in, coconut water straight out of the fridge, which is below 5 degrees. It'll be a real shock to the bacteria and they won't grow. So now I'm going to go ahead and get my sterile jar and get my culture, and I'm going to put the tiniest little bit in. Because remember, there's enough for 100 litres in there. So here's my tiny bit of culture. Pop that in. Put my lid back on, and then I'm going to mix that up. Very easy to mix up. Of course, if I was doing a larger batch, I wouldn't be mixing it like this because I'd make a big mess. I'd slosh it everywhere. Okay, now this needs to breathe, just the same as you would do kefir grains. When you put the grains in, it needs to breathe. So I'm going to cover it with a cloth and put a rubber band on to secure it. So it's happily going to stay there. The reason you need the cloth is, while it needs to breathe, you don't want any little bugs getting in there. So fruit flies, for example, are attracted to acid. So the reason that they are predominant in the fruit growing areas, and I'm from Stanthorpe, so that's something that I'm very familiar with, is when hail or anything or a bird breaks the skin of the fruit, bacteria attacks the fruit and turns sugar into acid. The fruit flies then know that the skin is broken, so there's somewhere to lay their eggs. So they're always attracted to acid. So as this ferments, acid is created and fruit flies will seek you out. And because I am surrounded by apple orchards in Stanthorpe, all the fruit flies in the whole neighbourhood will seek me out. So here I go, I've covered it, nothing can get in it. Now I need to keep it at that 30 degrees for 24 hours. Quite frankly, in Brisbane, that is not a problem. It's 30 degrees in my house all day. I'm not running air conditioning while I'm not there. And in the summer, quite often it doesn't go below 25, which is really good for the kefir. Not so good for me, but good for the kefir. But it's winter now. It's cold. Yesterday when I got up, it was 7 degrees in my living room. So I'm going to get this pot of water that I had previously had the coconut water sitting in. I'm going to go ahead and put my whole jar into that pot of water. And I'm going to keep it in that warm water. But the water is going to cool down, so I need to take one additional step. I need to put something in to keep this warm. So this is what I'm going to use. I know this might seem like a weird idea, but this is a fish tank heater. So if I go ahead and take this fish tank heater and just pop it into that water and plug it in, so I'm just going to plug it in. Now it's going to keep it at 30 degrees for 24 hours. The important thing to know about fish tank heaters is they're not very expensive. They keep the water the perfect temperature, but you need to make sure you get one from a reputable Australian company and not just order one online for overseas. It needs to meet Australian standards. That plug needs to be safe. If your house burns down and you've been using something dodgy from overseas, you have no insurance coverage, just to let you know. So you do want to make sure that it meets Australian standards. So the ones on the Green Living Australia website do meet Australian standards. And if you go to a pet shop in Australia, you're going to buy one that meets Australian standards. If you order one online from overseas, you have no idea if it meets Australian standards. So just don't do that. It's not worth a couple of dollars to burn your house down. So now that this is done, I can just leave that for 24 hours. In 24 hours time, I can come back, I can take this cloth off and I can taste it. If it's not tangy enough, then I can leave it for another few hours. These bacteria are going to continue to eat the sugar and divide about every half an hour. So they're going to continue to produce more acid out of the natural sugars in the coconut water for me. Once I've tasted it and I'm happy with it, which might be 24 hours, it might be 26 hours, it might be 28 hours. Everyone's got a slightly different taste for acid and sugar, and I like mine to be a bit on the tangy side. But once I'm done, I go ahead and I take it out. Just move this aside for now. Remove the cloth and go ahead and close it. You can now pop this in the door of your fridge and cool it down, ready to drink, or if you wanted to, you could leave it out again. Put it back in your warm water with the lid closed and leave it for another 24 hours. Before it was breathing, right? And what was happening is the carbon dioxide that was being produced by the fermentation process was escaping. But now you're going to do a second ferment. If you put the lid on and ferment it for another 24 hours, the carbon dioxide is not going to escape. It is going to carbonate your coconut water or your water sugar mixture or your apple juice, whatever you have that you want to ferment. As long as it's got some sugar in it, the bacteria will be happy. You will actually see the bubbles start to form in the bottle. So after 24 hours, you can take it out again, and now you can pop it in your fridge, and you will have a carbonated coconut water kefir, or a carbonated water kefir, or a carbonated apple juice kefir. There are so many things that you could think of to carbonate, to do with this. There's an experiment I'm actually doing right now where I've made myself some cranberry tea. I've added some sugar to it, and I'm fermenting it to see what that turns out like. So I'll share that with you in another video after I know that it works out well for me. But now I'm going to go ahead and put this back in my pot because it's not ready. Go ahead and put it back in my pot so I can second ferment it tomorrow and have it in the fridge the day after that. So that's just going to stay with me. So remember that if you want to make just one kind of kefir and you're going to be making it all the time, non-stop, kefir grains are going to work for you. So if you already have them, just keep doing that. If you want to make multiple different types, if you want to take a break, if you don't want to get a babysitter for your grains, or you don't want to accidentally kill them, trying to freeze them and bring them back to life, which I've done a couple of times, then maybe kefir culture is the answer for you. Now, if you have any questions about making kefir, you can contact us at greenlivingaustralia.com.au. We run a helpline. This is a brilliant way to make a very healthy drink with a minimum of effort. I mean, literally, it takes a minute to make this. And then the bacteria does the work for you in the next 24 hours. If you liked this video, please share it with other people that might be interested in making things themselves and saving money. The next time that I talk to you, what I want to talk to you about is making your own coconut yogurt. I'm sure you've all seen the price of coconut yogurt in the store. Well, you can make your own very economically, and that you also know that the bacteria is alive. So we'll talk to you about that next time. So share this video. Thank you very much for listening to me. If you have ideas of other things you'd like me to talk about, shoot us an email at sales@greenlivingaustralia.com.au. Thanks a lot.